What on earth is this chaos? The living room looks like a tornado tore through it. How could you possibly live in such a mess? And where's my son, who's supposed to be on parental leave? Isn't he supposed to be helping? Wait, Helen? Aren't you supposed to be in the hospital? I let out a deep sigh as Helen, who has a habit of dropping by unannounced no matter how many times I ask her not to, stood there with a shocked expression. Where did she even get discharged from the hospital? I hadn't heard a word about it. When I asked her, she looked at me wide-eyed with surprise and almost shouted, "Who told you I was in the hospital?" My name is Laura, and I'm a 31-year-old stay-at-home mom. Life didn't always look this way for me, though. Before I turned 30, I worked full-time as a project manager. But when my husband Mark and I decided to start fertility treatments, I left my job to focus on building a family. We thought it would happen quickly. We were so optimistic. But, as it turns out, life doesn't always go as planned. A year passed, and the expenses from the treatments began to pile up. Just as I started considering taking a part-time job to ease the financial burden, we got the news. I was finally pregnant. Now I'm in my second trimester, which should be the more stable part of pregnancy, right? Well, not exactly. Especially when you're expecting twins, they say there's no such thing as a stable phase. Twins? Yes, twins. I still can't believe it sometimes. Although the fertility treatment we used was relatively mild, just timed intercourse, it's still incredible that this happened naturally. Now that I think about it, twins run in Helen's side of the family. Maybe it's genetic? Whatever the reason, we were blessed with not one but 2 children. Exactly what we had wished for. It's impossible not to feel overjoyed. But let's be honest, this is my first pregnancy and carrying twins is no walk in the park. I'm thrilled, of course, but it's also overwhelming in ways I never imagined. Unlike a single pregnancy, a twin pregnancy comes with extra risks. Even my doctor warned me, don't count on any period of stability. By now, the morning sickness should have subsided, but I still feel nauseous most of the time. In the early weeks, it was so bad I had to go to the hospital for IV treatments. Those IV drips were a lifesaver. They made me feel human again. Modern medicine is amazing, isn't it? But while my doctor is nothing short of wonderful, there's someone in my life who is the complete opposite. My husband, Mark, or as I sometimes call him in my head, the useless one. Mark has a remarkable talent for completely ignoring the fact that I'm pregnant. It's not like I'm expecting to be treated like royalty or anything, but would a little compassion kill him? When my morning sickness was at its peak, he'd come home without sparing a thought for how I was feeling. I'm starving. Once I get out of the shower, dinner better be ready. And with that, he'd march straight to the bathroom. What the hell? There's no hot water, he'd shout, like it was my fault. Whatever, I'll just eat first then. What is this? We're having takeout again? Are you kidding me? He'd complain loudly, completely oblivious to how hard things already were for me. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why he earns the title the useless one. You know, pregnancy isn't a disease. Have you never heard that famous saying? Don't think you can just use being pregnant as an excuse to slack off. You're a stay-at-home wife. At least handle the housework properly. If this had been a time when I wasn't nauseous 24/7, I probably would have told him, your brain must only process what's convenient for you. I would have yelled at him that pregnancy is just as delicate and demanding as any medical condition, but I was so nauseous back then I couldn't even open my mouth without running straight to the bathroom. Even the IV treatments, I begged him to take me to the hospital because I was so sick. Geez, you look absolutely horrible. Your face is terrifying me. That's what he had the nerve to say. Does a man seriously say that to his pregnant wife? I'm busy right now. Can't you just go to the hospital by yourself? Oh, but don't waste money on a taxi. Just walk or take the bike. That's what he actually said. Needless to say, Mark doesn't help around the house, and thus my husband became the useless one. I endured the grueling pregnancy, vowing to myself, just wait until I safely deliver these babies. Well, I'll make sure he remembers this. And there's another person in my life who's just as bad, if not worse than Mark. My mother-in-law, Helen. And Mark's mother, Helen. Oh wait, they're the same person. Sorry, I'm so exhausted I can't even keep track of what I'm saying. Anyway, my mother-in-law could practically be defined as trouble. And if you looked up annoying, you'd probably find her picture. My own parents lived 2 hours away by car, which makes visiting a rare and well-planned event. On the other hand, Helen, my mother-in-law, lives just 5 minutes away. A quick jog, if she were so inclined. You might wonder why I say a quick jog. Well, during the early days of my marriage, Helen once called me out of the blue and said, "I need your help with something immediately. Run over here, would you?" Back then, I was young, newly married, and eager to make a good impression, so I ran. By the time I reached her house, panting from the exertion, Helen looked at me and said, "You're late. I've been waiting for 5 minutes." That's exactly what she said. Ever since, her house has been known in my mind as the 5-minute dash. And Helen became the can't wait 5 minutes mother-in-law. Helen, of course, takes full advantage of living nearby, constantly popping by unannounced or summoning me for some impromptu task. Unscheduled demands? Check. Surprise visits? You bet. And she doesn't care if it's a weekday, a weekend, or if I'm in the middle of something. Back when I was still working, at least her visits were limited to the evenings. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't good by any stretch of the imagination. But once I quit my job, she started showing up during the day too. Now, I find myself reminiscing about those good old days when her visits were at least somewhat predictable. During my fertility treatments, the side effects from the medications often left me feeling awful. And wouldn't you know it, those were precisely the days Helen would show up unannounced. I mean, what is that about, honestly? "Laura, since you're just sitting around doing nothing at home, I figured I'd come by." That's how she'd always start. "Now fix me something to eat." And of course, she'd immediately put me to work. She'd then proceed to spend hours sharing the latest neighborhood gossip. And once I got pregnant, she began showing up with a new twist. "I read that this supplement is good for pregnant women, so I bought it for you. It cost $11.56, so you can just give me $20. Yes, that's something she actually said, completely ignoring the logic, or lack thereof. Why am I expected to pay for something I never asked her to bring? And why does she always act like she's doing me a favor while demanding extra? Honestly, I can't make sense of it. It's completely absurd. Mother-in-law, a nuisance. Husband, a moron. And that, my friends, is how my pregnancy turned into a stress-filled ordeal, thanks to this ridiculous mother and son duo. I honestly deserve a medal for surviving this far. Sometimes I catch myself marveling at how I've managed to hold it together through all this chaos. Yes, I'll pat myself on the back for that. I kept promising myself once the babies are born, I'll treat myself to the biggest, fanciest ice cream sundae out there. Finally, the big day arrived. I gave birth to healthy twins, a boy and a girl. It wasn't without complications, though. One of the babies was breech, so I had to have a C-section. And let me tell you, the recovery from a C-section is no joke. It's a whole new level of pain. Sure, the anesthesia worked during the surgery, but the moment it wore off, oh, absolute agony. I used to watch old samurai movies and marvel at how warriors performed seppuku with such resolve. Now, the thought of willingly enduring that kind of pain makes me shudder. Still, I love those movies. I'll keep watching, just with a newfound respect for their pain tolerance. Though I might start skipping the gut-wrenching scenes, literally. And yet, there are just some clueless people out there. Having a C-section is the easy way out, Mark has said once. Can you even call yourself a real mom even if you didn't push the babies out? If someone said that to my face, I'd probably grab a bat and hit the home run of my life, straight at their head. C-sections are easy. What do they even know? I love to interrogate them. And yet the first person to belittle my C-section was my own husband. Mark's insensitive comments started the day the doctor gave us the all clear and I was discharged from the hospital. With my incisions still aching, he turned to me and said, "You can manage the twins and come home on your own, right?" Unbelievable. Mark had only visited the twins once after their birth and never returned to the hospital after that. Not once in the entire week I was there. And then, when I came home, he had the audacity to criticize me for having a C-section. I really did consider buying that bat. Oblivious to my growing fury, Mark nonchalantly said, "Oh, by the way, dinner tonight? A quick pasta or something would be fine." Yeah, he really said that. Let's just have pasta. No, Mark. I was too tired to argue at that point. "Why don't we just order takeout?" I suggested, suppressing the urge to scream. I said it through gritted teeth, trying not to let my temples throb visibly. "What? You've been living up in the hospital for a week, haven't you? You're a stay-home wife. Now that you're back, you should step up. Stop slacking off. Alright, that's it. I can't physically go out to buy a bat, but hey, there's always online shopping. I bet a metal bat would really sting. How much do those cost? I was genuinely planning my purchase, but let's get back on track here. Besides, between the sleepless nights and the constant feedings, I barely had time to pick up my phone, let alone shop for revenge weapons. Raising twins is a never-ending whirlwind. I wasn't producing enough breast milk, so I switched to formula. But as soon as one twin finished their bottle, the other would start crying for theirs. And when the second one was finally satisfied, the first one would be crying again. It felt like I was constantly making bottles, my days blurring into one endless cycle. And between all that, there were the diaper changes. Of course, their diaper needs were synchronized too, just to make life even more interesting. I suppose it's only natural. If they drink at the same time, they're bound to need a change at the same time too. But when both have a dirty diaper at once, someone has to wait. And no matter how quick I try to be, diaper rash was inevitable, which meant yet another trip to the pediatrician for ointment. I can't exactly leave one baby behind, so I haul both of them with me. And let me tell you, it's a circus act. The nurses are kind enough to help hold one twin while I manage the other, but even then it's exhausting. Naturally, I've asked Mark for help. But Mark? Completely uninterested in parenting. He's never once fed the twins or changed a single diaper. He barely even held them. One evening, I tried talking to him about it. Can you spend some time with the babies once in a while? But his response was as predictable as ever. They're just babies. I wouldn't even know what to do with them. I'll spend time with them when they start walking. That's months from now. So until then, he's not even going to hold them? Again, unbelievable. Let's backtrack for a second. I have been asking Mark for one simple thing months before the delivery. I wanted him to take paternity leave. His company had a progressive policy, and there was no reason he couldn't take time off. But as always, Mark had an excuse. I've got too many important projects. The team can't manage without me. Seriously? If a company falls apart because one person takes leave, isn't that a red flag for bigger issues? And let's be real, Mark isn't exactly CEO material. But what do I know about his company? It's not like I can march into his office and demand they make him take paternity leave. Now, a month into life with the twins, Mark claims he's swamped with overtime and comes home late almost every night. I've given up expecting anything from him, and I've grown used to handling everything on my own. In fact, I've come to realize life is easier when he's not around. At least, I don't have to watch him lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone, while I'm running around trying to manage the twins. Is dinner ready yet? Honestly, having him here is more stressful than doing it all alone. Yes, solo parenting is tough, but my twins are absolutely adorable. I can't help but think Mark is a fool for missing out on these precious moments. Not that it makes things any less exhausting. I haven't been able to take time for myself in days, or even weeks. Even when I manage to heat my food in the microwave, I almost never get to eat it right away. By the time I can sit down to eat, the food has usually gone cold or is still sitting, forgotten, in the microwave. Showers? A quick 5 minutes max. It's like a bird bath, just enough to stay clean. And then there are the nights, sleepless, because the twins take turns waking up and crying. I've lost count of how many times I've dozed off while feeding them, only to wake up to the sound of a bottle hitting the floor. And yet, during all this chaos, Helen, the queen of surprise visits, hasn't shown up even once. In fact, she visited me at the hospital once after the twins were born, but since then, radio silence. This is the same Helen who used to pop in unannounced at the worst possible times. My parents live far away, so it makes sense that they only visited me once during my hospital stay. They said we'll come visit once things settle down. Of course, things haven't exactly settled down yet, so they haven't made the trip. I considered staying with my parents for a while, but my brother and his family live with them, so it didn't feel practical. But Helen, I fully expected her to visit every day. Show me my grandchildren, or something to that effect. Honestly, I was even planning to use those visits to rope her into helping me, but the plan fell apart when she didn't even show up. An entire month has passed, and not once has she come by. What's going on? She hasn't even called. It's strange, isn't it? So one night, when Mark finally came home from work, I decided to ask him. Hey Mark, your mom hasn't been around at all. Is everything okay with her? Without missing a beat, Mark replied, Oh yeah, Mom's in the hospital. What? Is something wrong with her? What was it again? I forgot, but she needs to be hospitalized for it. What kind of son doesn't even remember why his mother is hospitalized? Is she okay at least? Actually, one reason I've been coming home late is because I've been helping her out. Wait, really? I was genuinely shocked. Mark being considerate? That didn't sound like him at all. I guess even someone like Mark knows how to care about his mom. If only he'd show the same care for his wife and kids. I've been taking her things, doing her laundry at her place, cleaning up. It's a lot of work. You know how houses get dirty even when no one's living there. Oh, I see. Well, I was surprised and maybe a little impressed by the sight of him. Yeah, but still, what about your wife and kids? I couldn't stop thinking it. He's doing all this for his mom, yet he's never so much as lifted a finger to clean or do laundry in our house. Clearly, he's capable when he wants to be. It left me feeling conflicted, resentful, but also resigned. What it boiled down to was this. My one-woman parenting show wasn't ending anytime soon. With a sigh, I accepted my reality. Then one day, about a month and a half after the twins were born, after another sleepless night of the twins taking turns crying, I finally got them to nap at the same time. I sat down next to them, nodding off myself. That's when it happened. Laura! Hello! Is anyone even home? What are you doing? The front door is wide open. Where's my welcome? Her sudden shouting jolted me awake, and of course, it startled the twins into wailing too. There goes my precious silence. I scrambled to pick up the twins, trying to soothe them as quickly as possible. They're still small enough that I can carry both at once, but my energy's been so drained lately that I need to grunt just to lift them. Why are you grunting like a gorilla? Oh wait, maybe you're one. Alright, Helen, I'll let you have this round. I briefly considered luring her outside and locking the door behind her. It had been a while since I'd heard Helen's voice, but it was as irritatingly familiar as ever. I heard her footsteps approaching. If my hands weren't full with the twins, I would have bolted. Before I could react, Helen was standing right in front of me. Oh, good grief. What's with this mess? You know dust is a mortal enemy for babies, right? She scrunched up her face in disgust, wearing that same infuriating expression I'd come to know so well. She might call me a gorilla, but honestly, her eyes looked more like a gorilla's than mine ever would. Sorry, I just haven't had the time to clean. Excuse me? If you have time to sit around doing nothing, you surely have time to clean. Sitting around? I don't even remember the last time I did that. How could she look at my life right now and even think that? I shot her a glare, and finally her gaze met mine. In that moment, Helen went silent. Her eyes widened as she stared at me. Wait, why do you look so thin? Have you lost weight? Well, I haven't had a proper meal in ages. Why are you carrying both of them at the same time? Because they started crying at the same time, obviously. And my son? Where's Mark? He's at work. Where else? Helen had bombarded me with questions, but her voice broke into a trembling whimper as she fell silent again. What was this about? Why did she suddenly seem shaken? Still rocking the twins in my arms, I studied her face carefully. This wasn't her usual overbearing glare. Her expression was tinged with something else. Was it worry? Laura, tell me the truth. The truth about what? Over the past month and a half, what exactly has my son been doing? Her question hit me like a brick. I was totally confused. According to Mark, he'd been busy taking care of her, but something about that story never quite added up. And now, looking at Helen's face, I was sure of it. He'd been lying. I've been wondering for a while. Were you really in the hospital? In the hospital? Of course not. My heart skipped a beat. But Mark told me that. I couldn't finish the sentence. My mind was already racing. Helen's eyes narrowed as she studied my reaction. That boy is hiding something. Her words unleashed all the doubts and unease I'd been trying to suppress. What if Mark was lying? The thought began to consume me. Helen glanced at my phone, which was sitting on the table nearby. Laura, check your phone. Right now. Check what? Find out where Mark is. I hesitated for a moment, but the urgency in her voice compelled me to grab the phone. I suddenly remembered the GPS tracking app we'd installed when we first got married, just in case of emergencies, we said. I opened the app and pulled up Mark's current location. The moment the map loaded, my hands began to shake. What is this place? The location was somewhere nearby, a building I didn't recognize. Zoom in. Let's see it closer. Following her instructions, I zoomed in. The name of the building appeared, written in bold letters under its pink roof. Is this a hotel? It wasn't just any hotel. It was a love hotel. My mind went completely blank. Ugh, that idiot. Helen's low, trembling voice snapped me back to reality. We're going there. Oh wait, right now? Of course. Before I knew it, we were in a taxi, the twins in our arms, heading straight for that hotel. My heart was pounding like it was about to explode, yet somehow my body felt eerily calm. What was waiting for us there? One thing was certain, it wasn't going to be good. A few minutes later, the taxi pulled up to the Love Hotel and we positioned ourselves outside, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Both Helen and I held a baby close to our chests, their tiny, peaceful faces a stark contrast to the tension bubbling around us. We'd bundled them tightly in warm blankets to shield them from the chill of the night air. Exhausted from sleep deprivation, I almost felt like I could drift off myself. When I glanced over at Helen, I saw her completely enamored with her grandson's sleeping face, a soft smile spreading across her usually stern features. Her silent cooing was almost enough to make me lose my focus, but I quickly reminded myself to stay calm and collected. Suddenly, Helen's expression hardened. There they are. Her sharp gaze locked onto Mark, who was walking out of the hotel with a young woman I didn't recognize. So that's her, the other woman. Without a second thought, I pulled out my phone and snapped a few pictures to document the scene. Then, with Helen beside me, we stepped forward, blocking their path. Mark? Mark froze, his face twisting in shock at our sudden appearance. The color drained from his face as he realized he'd been caught. Why? Why are you here? I should be asking you the same thing. I thought you were at the hospital taking care of your mother. I left the hospital and I wasn't feeling well, so I stopped here to rest. His pathetic excuse left me completely dumbfounded. Helen, too, looked utterly unimpressed as she chimed in. Oh, since when did you become so dedicated to your mother? This isn't... So tell me, how long am I supposed to be in the hospital? And at which hospital exactly am I admitted? Even in the dim light, it was clear. Mark was breaking into a cold sweat. Let's be honest. What the hell are you doing here? Mom, it's just... You left these beautiful babies at home for this? What kind of idiot are you? I'm sorry. Overwhelmed by Helen's rage, Mark finally broke down into tears. He collapsed onto his knees, groveling pathetically on the ground. The twins woke up and started giggling at the sight, and before I knew it, I was laughing too. Wow, Helen. As for the other woman, she claimed she didn't know Mark was married. I didn't know, but I'm truly sorry. She bowed deeply in apology, so I decided not to press the matter further. Don't ever get involved with an idiot like him again. With Helen's words of warning echoing behind her, the woman walked away. Afterward, Mark was subjected to an unrelenting verbal takedown from Helen. You're going to take paternity leave, starting now, and you're going to let Laura get the rest she deserves. And yes, that means you're taking over the housework and the childcare. Every bit of it. Do it. Under Helen's ironclad authority, Mark had no choice but to surrender completely. It was a surprising turn of events. Honestly, Helen, I thought you'd always take Mark's side, no matter what. The words slipped out before I could stop them. What are you talking about? Of course not. Being a mother in any form is incredibly, incredibly hard. I went through it myself. Even if it was a long time ago, I understand. And with twins? That's on a whole other level. It's beyond hard. It's nearly impossible. I was a little taken aback by her words, but I nodded in agreement. Then why haven't you come to visit even once before now? The Helen I knew would have shown up unannounced at least a dozen times by now. When I asked her directly, her answer took me completely by surprise. Because I was trying to be considerate. What? Mark told me he was taking paternity leave. I thought you two were trying to adjust to being parents and I didn't want to interfere. Knowing myself, I figured it was best to stay away or I might meddle too much. I had to admit she had a point. Still, it was surprising to hear her say she'd held back for my sake. But even when I asked for pictures of the twins, Mark wouldn't send me any. After a month and a half, I figured it would be okay to visit just once. From now on, please give me a heads up before you visit. While I appreciated her help today, I still couldn't tolerate unannounced visits. I gave her a polite smile that didn't reach my eyes, and for once, Helen actually looked a little sheepish. Who would have thought that having grandchildren could transform someone like her? The power of grandchildren truly is remarkable. Following Helen's ultimatum, Mark finally applied for paternity leave, but even after starting his leave, he made no real effort to engage in childcare. When neither Helen nor I was around, he'd slack off at every opportunity. One day, Helen and I decided to go grocery shopping together. Wait, you're leaving me alone with the twins? It's just an hour. You can handle that much, can't you? Leaving a bewildered Mark behind, Helen and I stepped outside. Instead of heading straight to the store, we quietly moved to a spot outside where we could peer into the house. That's when we heard Mark's voice from inside. This is ridiculous. Why the hell do I have to do this? His words were clear, loud, and dripping with frustration. Barely 5 minutes after we'd left. Oh, the twins are asleep. Alright, this is my chance. I'm going out too. Yeah, there was that cute girl at the bar I went to before. Maybe I'll stop by and see her. I'll be back in an hour. If Laura texts me, I'll just say I stepped out for a bit to see if she needed help carrying the bags inside or something. Alright, time for a drink. He'd narrated his entire plan out loud, as if daring the universe to intervene. The front door slammed open, and there we stood, blocking his path. Oh, why are you two still here? I pointed a finger at him and delivered my verdict. You're out. Beside me, Helen pressed a hand to her forehead and sighed deeply. What happened after that, you ask? Of course, I divorced him. Frankly, life is better without someone like him. Any man who could casually neglect his own children has no place in their lives, or mine. Mark tried begging for a second chance, but it was far too late. With the help of a lawyer, I ensured he paid both alimony and child support in one hefty lump sum. Surprisingly, it was Helen who introduced me to the excellent attorney. Or rather, your former mother-in-law. I figured my grandchildren didn't need such an idiot for a father. That's what she said, because as it turns out, she values her adorable grandchildren far more than her foolish son. The twins and I moved into a new home, a fresh start for our new life. I had been handling everything on my own from the beginning, so nothing about this felt overwhelming anymore. In fact, life felt more peaceful, more comfortable now. Why, you ask? Yoo-hoo! Grandma's here! Because Helen, my former mother-in-law, visited nearly every day. Though we were no longer related, she remained the twins' grandmother, tied to them by blood, and I had no intention of keeping them apart just to spite Mark. Besides, as much as we'd clashed, Helen had come through for me when it mattered most. Now she was a hands-on grandma, helping with childcare and lending an ear whenever I needed advice. See? I knew that you were perfectly capable to calling ahead when you want to visit. Of course, if I showed up unannounced, you'd just yell at me and leave me standing outside. You're pretty scary when you're mad, Laura. Our relationship had become one of mutual respect. I'd grown much more comfortable speaking my mind about her, and I had a feeling this balance would last for years to come. You've really changed, Laura. I nodded at her comment. Mothers are tough. We have to be. At that, we both burst into laughter. Hearing us, the twins joined in with their own giggles, filling the room with joy. In those moments of shared laughter, I made a new vow to myself. I promised to live even stronger for myself and my children. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the sake of these precious moments of laughter with my family, I could endure anything. What about Mark? Honestly, I have no idea how he's doing. He'll never see these smiles again, though, and maybe that's the greatest punishment he could face. Life only happens once. Holding on to what truly matters, that alone is enough to make you feel triumphant. So I'll keep pushing forward, one step at a time. And above all, for my beloved twins.